Okay, the previous class I was discussing about the that is concepts of object oriented programming. Now the process of this when we are going to study the benefits of object oriented programming, that we what we call it as the advantages of the OOPS, right? So that is the benefits of OOPS is like other object oriented programming offers several benefits to both the program designer and the user. The object orientation contributes to the solution of many problems which are associated with the development and quality of the software products. The new technology promises greater programmer productivity, better quality of software, and lesser maintenance cost. The principal advantage of these are: first one, data security. Through the data security, that is with the help of the data hiding property, right, we can give the security for the data. That is the principle of data hiding helps the programmer to build secure programs, and they cannot be invaded by the code in other parts of the program. Okay, and though through the saving of development time and the higher productivity, that means the through the inheritance, right, what we can do is we can eliminate the redundant code and extend the use of the existing classes. There we can improve, we can save that time, so that your development time is going to be uh, reduced. Okay, so when we build a programs from standard working module that communicate with one another rather than having to start writing the code from the scratch, this leads to the saving of development time and higher productivity. And the next property is a reusability, that is a inheritance property. Right, as I told that through the inheritance, we can eliminate the redundant code and extend the use of existing classes. Then the next property is that it is possible to have multiple instances of the object to coexist without any interferences. That is a multiple object features we have. And next property is it is easy to partition the work in a project based on the object. Okay, that is because when we are going to divide the large program into the smaller units, right, so each and unit is going to create a separate object. The data center design approach enables us to capture more details of the model in implementable form. That is we can upgrade from smaller to the large system. Okay, then next is the object oriented programs can be easily upgraded from small to the larger system, right? That is combining all the functions into a single unit and make it as a larger program. Why we are going to divide that into the smaller units is because of the reason is that so we can do the what we can say that the debugging will be easier and easy to identify the errors, right? And we can easily find out where exactly the problem occurs in a particular function, right? So then next is due to from the message processing technique, right? So we can for communication between the objects makes the interface descriptions with the external systems much simpler. Okay, then last will be software complexity can be easily managed. That is because of the reason is very simple that since it has so many properties of like object oriented reusability, operator overloading property, right, and a polymorphism property. Or because of all these things, all these properties which we is going to be included in object oriented program, that makes the software is complexity can be easily managed with all these properties. Then when you come to the applications, so where actually these project oriented programmings are going to be useful. Okay, This object-oriented program has become one of the programming buzzwords today. There appears to be a great deal of excitement and the interesting among the software engineers to using and using this among the software engineers in using object oriented program. Applications of object oriented programs are beginning to gain an importance in many areas. The most popular application of object oriented programming is up to now has been in the area of user interface design such as Windows. Hundreds of windowing systems have been developed using the object oriented programming techniques. And real-time business systems are often much more complex and contain many more objects with complicated attributes and methods. Object-oriented program is useful in these types of applications because it can simplify a complex problem. The promising area for application of object-oriented program include real-time systems, simulation and modeling, right? Object-oriented databases, hypertext, hypermedia, and expert systems, artificial intelligence systems and expert systems, right? And neural networks and parallel programming concepts, and decision support and office automation system, and CAD CAM designing of the CAD CAM and CAED systems. Okay, in all these fields, we are going to use the object oriented programming because of the reason is very simple that they are very easy to implement in these areas. Okay, so applications is what where we are going to apply these object oriented concepts in the real world problems, right? That is what it is about the the applications of the object oriented programs. Okay, so now another very important before passing on to the next topic, that is the difference between the object oriented and the procedure oriented program. Let me study, there are some languages, object oriented languages, right? So object oriented programming is not the right of any particular language. Like structured programming, object oriented programming concept can be implemented using the languages like C and Pascal, right? However, the programming becomes a clumsy and may generate a confusion when the programs grow very large programs, right? A language that is specially designed to support the object-oriented programming concepts makes it easier to implement them. Then the languages should support several of the object-oriented concepts to claim they are the object-oriented depending upon the features they support. They can be classified into the two categories. One is called as object-oriented programming language. The other one is called as object-oriented programming. Um, One is object oriented programming, the other one is object based programming languages. The object based programming is the style of programming that primarily supports encapsulation and object identity. Major features that are required for object based programming are which includes data encapsulation, data hiding and access mechanism, automatic initialization and clear up of objects, and the operator overloading. The programs or the properties or the features which supports these features or the concepts, they are called as object based programming languages, right? The languages that support with objects are said to be object based programming language. They do not support inheritance and dynamic binding. Ada is a typical object based programming language. You people are familiar the word ADA. That is the only language which is called as the object based language which supports only those features. Okay, when you are going to study the object oriented programming language, the features or the concepts, object based language, object based features plus inheritance plus dynamic binding. So that forms a object oriented programming. Languages that support these features which include a C++, Smalltalk, Object Pascal and Java. There are a large number of object-based and object-oriented programming languages. Okay. The purpose of these object-oriented languages and their characteristics will be the Eiffel and Java is the early binding, that is the, and Java is both early binding as well as a late binding. Eiffel is also a the pure object oriented programming language, but it does not support, it is not that much popular because of the reason is that it is a early binding. Okay, late binding is not available. So all the, and ADA is a object based language. Okay, and Simula, Smalltalk, and Eiffel are all Java are all pure object oriented programming languages. Object based language is only ADA. Okay, and you can ask one question is, ma'am, C++ is also object oriented programming language. Yes, but it is extended conventional language. We will not call it as object oriented programming fully, or we never call that as objective based, because it supports all the features of the object oriented programming language, but it is not called as a pure object oriented, since it is having the pointer concept, it is having the procedure oriented programming concept, right? And it works both procedure oriented as well as the object oriented. That's why it is called as a other extended conventional languages. Okay, so now come to the difference between the pop and the OOP. Very important property that, so pop is we call it as a procedure oriented programming, and OOP we call it as the object oriented programming. Okay, represents the procedure oriented programming, and the pop is a OOP is a object oriented programming. The first very important point is the procedure oriented programming is emphasis on the procedures, functions. Okay, and the object oriented programming is going to emphasis on the data rather than the procedures. And the second is programming task is divided into, that is a large program is divided into the smaller ones. Okay, so they're called as a and they're called as a functions. Okay, programming task is divided into the collection of data structures and functions, and programming task is divided into the objects consisting of data variables and associated member functions. Okay, in procedure oriented programming are separated from data being manipulated, whereas in object oriented programming procedures are not separated from the data. Instead, procedures and data are combined together, and the property is called as a data encapsulation property. Okay, so a piece of code uses the data to perform the specific task. The data uses a piece of code to perform a specific task. Here see, the code is uses the data to perform a specific task. Here the opposite of that, the data uses the piece of code to perform the specific task. That is because the object oriented programming gives more importance for the data rather than the procedures, and object procedure oriented programming gives more on the algorithms and procedures rather than the data. And data is moved freely from one function to another function using the parameters. Data is hidden and can be accessed only by the member functions, not by external functions. Okay, so data is moved freely, no restrictions, right? So it is something like a declaration of global variables. All the variables, once it is declared as a global, that can be accessed by any number of functions which are present in that particular programming file. Okay, and here data is in object oriented programming, data is hidden and can be accessed only by member functions, not by external function. So in the procedure oriented programming, since there is no provision for declaring the variables under some sections or under the class or the, okay, it is public, okay, data is not secure. There is no provision for security of the data in case of the procedure oriented program. That is because the data is moving in and around of the system, right? Say for example global variables, all the functions can manipulate the global variables. They can use and they can manipulate and they can delete, they can hide whatever they want, they can do it. Okay, in that way data is not secured. In object oriented programming, data is secured, okay, because there is a provision for the private declaring some of the variables under the private section. Only the member function of the same class can access that data. In that way data is secured. And the next point is the procedure oriented program always define the function on the top, and it is going to define the calling functions below the main program. So that's why the compiler always starts its execution from the top and move on to the down to execute the functions, because all the functions definitions are present below the main program. That is the reason why top-down approach is used in the program design. And in the object-oriented programming concept, bottom-up approach is used in program design. That is, the program starts its execution from the bottom, because the main program is present at the bottom of the program in C++, and all the functions, member functions are defined before the main heading. So that is why, so main program, it starts execution from the main program. Whenever the function execution is called there, it proceeds on to the top of the program. That is why it moves from bottom to the top. That is why it is called as a bottom-up approach is used in the program design. So here in the procedure-oriented program, debugging is a difficult as the code size increases. Okay. But here in object-oriented programming, debugging is easier even if the code size is more also. That is because the division of the large module into the small module. Okay. So next we'll go on to the difference between the C and C++. Okay. Comparison of C with the C++. So first one, it is a procedure oriented programming language, and the C language is it is also called as a middle level language, right? Because it is developed in the third generation of a language, like it follows the logic and some of the control structures similar like a Pascal, right? Only the grammar of the language changes, right? That is the grammar of the language is syntax. Syntax of the language changes. Grammar we call it, right? Whereas C++, as I told, it is an incremented version of the C language only. It contains both the features of C as well as a C++. That is object-oriented programs. It supports the object-oriented programs also. Okay. Now, second point is C language is emphasis on writing the functions which perform specific task, right? So it even C also uses the function to writing the functions. They're going to perform a particular task only. So here in C++, so here also we are going to write a functions, but we are going to emphasis on data rather than the procedures which uses the function to achieve the particular task. Here emphasis is given importance on the functions rather than the data, right? So C language, the data and functions are separate. Okay. So you can declare the variables in the beginning of the program itself, and functions you can call and you can declare and you can define in throughout your program file. Okay, they are separate, they are not wrapped, right? whereas data and functions are combined and declared in a one property called as a data encapsulation property. Okay, C language does not support polymorphism or inheritance. As C language, you know that it is a procedure oriented program. It never supports the polymorphism and the inheritance. Whereas it supports polymorphism and the inheritance, since they are the concepts of the object oriented programming. C programs run faster because why? The execution speed for the procedure oriented programming is faster compared to the C++, because the reason is very simple, that so here the in C language, so they does not give much importance for the security of the data. They will not check anything whether the variable is used by other functions or not. Okay, and return type functions like that. So there will be no less checkings will be there. That is why it runs faster. Whereas C++, since it has to check the parameters, it has to check the data hiding property, that variables are declared and used by the member functions of the same class, right? Other functions are not allowed. That and all it needs to check. So that is the reason why it is going to take more time. They slower when compared to the equivalent to C programs. So type checking is not so strong as I told. Here type checking is very strong. Okay, even it will not allow the user to specify the particular type. Okay, so millions of lines code and code management is very difficult because of the algorithms, right? Algorithmic approach, right? In C++, millions of lines of code can be managed very easily. Okay, since this large block of code will be divided into the smaller modules in C++. Okay, so building blocks, as I am telling, functions are the building blocks of a C++ program. Okay, that is the reason why millions of lines of code can be managed very easily. Then eighth one is function definition and declarations are not allowed within a structure. Okay, structure is, as I told, class is an extension of a structure where we can define group of variables, and in structures all the variables are become a public. Whereas in C++ it allows the class extension of the structure is a class which allows the user to define and declare the methods, that is the functions as well as the variables. They are called as a member functions and the data members, right? So functions here it is a private by default, and in C structures, right, all the members become a public by default. Okay, so this is about the difference between the C and C++ language. Okay, so procedure oriented, object oriented gives importance to the data rather than the procedure. Here it gives more importance for the functions rather than the uh, uh, it gives more importance for the data rather than the procedure. So here there is no combining of the data and the functions together. In C++, we have the option called as a data encapsulation property, where the wrap up of the class and the variables are done or combined. And C language does not support polymorphism and inheritance. C++ supports polymorphism and inheritance. They run faster. C language programs run faster. So, and the C++ programs are slower when compared to the equivalent C program. And in C language, type checking is not so strong, and C++ type checking is very strong. And C language, millions of lines of code management is very difficult, whereas in C++, millions of lines of code can be managed very easily. Function definition and declarations are not allowed within a structure definition, whereas Function definitions and declarations are allowed within a structure definition. These are the main differences between the and other some other features are also there, which are not that much important when compared to these features. And if they ask for 10 marks also, if you write this many, it is more than enough. Okay. So console input and output in C++, that is the console init, which is having the input and output, that is the related to your input and output devices statements, that is we call it as a input output statements in C++, right? Here also C++, it uses stdio.h, it can use printf and scanf functions also, get line, put as, get as, all it can use. But the very important is that C++, since it is object oriented programming, it is also having its own concepts, right? And console input output in C++, that is the input output functions which are defined in the iostream.h header file. Suppose I want to work on a C++ program, I need to include the iostream.h, which are where the input output statements syntax grammar has been defined in that header file, right? And since C++ is works on the objects and classes, right, and it is having the iStream class and IOStream class, which is combined into the IOStream class. That is the properties of this iStream class and OStream class are inherited into the IOStream class, right? So that is the reason why we are going to include a iostream.h as a header file. All the input and output functions or objects and classes are defined in the iostream class. Okay, iStream is the input stream class, and cin will be the object and which is going to be used as an input object, right? And ostream is another OStream is another class, that is the output stream class, right? And the object which is used to invoke the methods is the cout. Cout is used as the object to output statement. Suppose when you are going to call it as a statement, when you are going to end with a semicolon by writing the statement, by writing the input object and the output object, we call that is about the input output statements in C++ programming language. It can also use scanf and printf, right? Apart from that, it is having its own features. Cin is equivalent to the scanf, that is it is going to read the data from the user, right? And cout is equivalent to printf, which is going to use it to display the information on the screen. That is a printf. What it does, it is going to display the information on the screen of your computer. In similar manner, even the cout is also used to display the information on the screen. Okay. Now, along with the cin and cout, the insertion operator and the extraction operator have been defined. You have to use it. Okay. Insertion operator, why it is called as an insertion operator? Because it is going to insert the data on the screen of your computer. It displays the data, inserts the data, right? So we use a insertion operator along with the cout. Okay, and cin which uses the extraction operator. That symbol is a 2 lesser than symbol, right, which is going to be used to read in the data. Okay, read the data from the keyboard. Cin is used for keyboard input and cout is used for screen output. That is a console input and output statements. Since cin and cout are C++ objects, they are somewhat intelligent. They are the objects of iStream and the OStream class, right? They do not require the usual format strings and conversion specifications. Like printf and scanf, they don't require the %f, %d, %c like conversion specifiers, right? here, so it is going to use only the so it is going to use them. They do not require the format strings and conversion specifications. They do automatically know what data types are involved. They do not need the address operator, right? So scanf uses the address operator because that is very much required. They do not need the address operator since in scanf we are going to use the address operator to store the value of a variable, right? In C++ language we are not using any the address operator, right? So we are going to use the uh, no conversion specifiers. We use a extraction operator which is going to extract the data from the keyboard. How many variables are you are going to extract the data, input the data, those many extraction operator we need to write. Okay, they do require the use of the stream extraction, that is a extraction operator, and the insertion operators for cin and cout. So extraction operator, to get the input from the keyboard, we use the extraction operator and the object cin, right? And syntax will be here cin, the extraction operator, and you have to give the variable. Suppose you have the multiple variables to input the data, you have to use multiple extraction operator, right? So variable cin is object, extraction operator, variable 1, extraction operator, variable 2, extraction operator, dash dash up to variable n. Okay, no need for ampersand in front of the variable like in the scanf, right? In scanf we use a conversion specifier to tell the compiler that this format of the data is we want to input, right? Here in C++ that it does not require such kind of the input, such kind of the information for any variable. No need for and in front of the variable. The compiler figures out the type of the variable and reads the appropriate type. Say for example, you take one example. See, IOS as include iostream.h, as I told, like C programs, what you are going to include stdio.h, right? Here we are going to include a iostream.h as a header file because all your input output console IOs or syntaxes are defined in the iostream.h. Void main, int x, float y, scene x and scene y. Insertion operator, to send output to the screen, we use the insertion operator on the object cout. Syntax will be cout, insertion operator, and you have to give the variable. Suppose you want to display the message as it is, you have to enclose with a double quotes, right? And if you want to display the variable value, don't give the double quotes, because double quotes, it does not require the what I can say, the you should not give the double quotes. Double quotes is used only when you want to display as it is, right? When you want to display the message, don't give the double quotes. Compiler figures out the type of the object and prints it out appropriately. Okay, so you take this example. See here, as include iostream.h, void main, cout5, cout4.1, cout string, and cout \n. That is a new line character, that it should be given in the double quotes only. The new line character also you have to give it in the double quotes, not in the single quotes. Okay, because even though you are going to type two characters, but it is a backslash and new line character is treated as the single, that is a single character, escape sequence character, right? See, the output will be 4.1 string, and it brings to the next line. the cursor will bring the cursor is pointing on the next line. Okay. So now second programming example, how we are going to use arrays with respect to this string. Okay, array of characters, right? Integer a comma b, float k. And one more very important thing is in improvement in C++ is dynamic dynamic initialization of variables. So what do you mean by dynamic initialization is, it is one at the time of the use we are going to declare the variable, right? That is called as a dynamic initialization. In C, it's not like that. You have to declare all the variables in the beginning itself, right? Whereas in C++, it is not necessary to declare the variables in the beginning itself. You can declare the variables anywhere in the program. Okay, that is what the we can say is the dynamic initialization of the variables in C++. Now see, int a comma b, float k, character name 30, enter your name. So see in name, you have to enter the name of a group of characters. You know that word is a group of characters, right? You are entering the name, enter two integers and a float. A, B are the integers. We are declared int A, B, A comma B is an integer, float K is a floating point data type, right? Then we are going to print a message, thank you, your name entered is this one. Okay, and see out A comma B and K, we are printing the value of the A, B and K values, right? A, B, A, B are the integer values, and K is the floating point values, right? So we are going to give a new line character, right? The new line character brings the cursor to the next line. So I am going to enter the name of a person is a Mahesh, and I am going to enter two integer numbers and floating point. 10 is A, and first value will be assigned to the A and second value will be assigned to the B, and third value float, that is a K, 30.5. So what is the message you are displaying in the CO? Thank you Mahesh, right? And name of a person is Mahesh. You entered, we have entered the Mahesh as a name, and see out the A value 10 comma, see here comma is given within the double quotes, it is going to be printed as it is, right? Comma 20, and K value is 30.5. Okay, so it is going to print the value of whatever you are going to give it. Okay, that's all about the how we are going to implement the console input output objects in C++ with a header file iostream.h.